The awakening. The gentle hum of cryogenic pods echoed through the vast chambers of Luna Base Alpha, a sound that had persisted for 5 millennia. In pod chamber 7249, Sergeant Alejandro Lucero's eyes flickered open for the first time since Earth's fall. The neural interface immediately began feeding her information about humanity's current situation, a galaxy at war, Earth shattered into a cosmic graveyard, and humanity's descendants mutated into telepathic conquerors called the Alhium. Status report, she croaked, her throat dry from the long sleep. The chamber's AI responded with crystalline clarity, coalition forces losing ground on all fronts. Alhium expansion continues unchecked. Casualty reports indicate severe losses among Akaraka and Kakori forces. Alejandra pushed herself up from the pod, her muscles responding with surprising strength thanks to the preservation technology. The chamber's viewing window offered a perfect view of Earth, or what remained of it. Chunks of the planet floated in a macabre dance, held together by gravity but forever separated by whatever weapon the Alhium had used. "Show me the coalition species," she commanded. Holograms flickered to life around her, the crab-like Akaraka, master pilots and warriors, the methodical Kakori, brilliant technicians with their barnacle-enhanced intelligence, the timid but deadly Caroli, whose stinger-tipped tails contained enough venom to kill a small army. These were humanity's new allies, fighting a losing war against humanity's twisted children. In the adjacent chamber, Dr. Marcus Chen, their lead xenobiologist, was already reviewing data streams. "The genetic divergence is fascinating," he muttered, scrolling through Alhium biological data. "They've developed a tertiary brain lobe, completely new neural pathways. The telepathy isn't magic, it's evolution gone haywire." "Save the scientific fascination for later," Alejandra interrupted. "What's our strategic position?" Marcus's expression darkened. "Bad. The coalition's losing systems daily. The Alhium aren't just conquering, they're consuming. Every world they take becomes a breeding ground for more of them. And the worst part? They're learning, adapting. Each generation is stronger than the last." Alejandra moved to the command center, where newly awakened human officers were already coordinating with coalition forces. The massive view screen showed tactical displays of dozens of battlefronts, each one a desperate holding action against Alhium advances. "We need something they won't expect," she said, more to herself than anyone else. "They'll be ready for our technology, they've had 5,000 years to study it. They'll be ready for our tactics, they've probably got our entire military history in their databases. We need..." She paused, an idea forming. "Show me the coalition's special operations records. Every unusual mission, every unconventional strategy they've tried against the Alhium." Hours of review revealed a pattern. The only missions that ever came close to success were small-scale infiltrations, usually by mixed-species teams. The Alhium's telepathy gave them an overwhelming advantage against large human forces, but they struggled to track multiple alien thought patterns simultaneously. "That's it," Alejandra smiled grimly. "We don't need an army. We need a surgical strike team. And I know just the pilot for the job." The data packet on her tablet showed an Akaraka pilot named Shola, decorated, experienced, and importantly, notorious for thinking outside the box. Perfect for what Alejandra had in mind. She began drafting the mission parameters, knowing she was about to ask a small team to attempt something unprecedented, infiltrating the Alhium homeworld itself. The asset they would carry might be humanity's only chance to turn the tide, but first, they needed to get it there. As she worked, more humans were being awakened throughout the base. Each one brought with them skills and knowledge from Earth's past, but also questions about their new present. How had humanity gone so wrong? What had transformed their descendants into the Alhium? And most importantly, could they still be saved, or was extinction the only answer? Alejandra pushed these philosophical questions aside. Right now, she needed to focus on the practical, assembling the right team, preparing the asset, and giving them every possible advantage for their mission. Because if they failed, there wouldn't be anyone left to contemplate humanity's mistakes. In the hangar bay below, engineers were already modifying a Karaka cargo ship for the mission. The vessel would need to pass as a cult supply ship, the only vessels the Alhiam regularly allowed near their worlds. The modifications would have to be perfect, one slip would mean instant detection. Sergeant, a young lieutenant called from the communications station. We're receiving new intel from Coalition Deep Space Monitoring. The Alhiam have begun phase-shifting their capital ships. Our weapons are becoming less effective by the day. Alejandra nodded grimly. Time was running out. The Coalition's greatest advantage had been their superior ship-to-ship combat technology. If the Alhiam had found a way to counter that. Send the mission briefing to all team members, she ordered. And make sure our asset is properly prepared. We get one shot at this, let's make it count. As she watched the briefing transmission being sent, Alejandra couldn't help but appreciate the irony. Humanity had slept for 5,000 years, hoping to wake to a better future. Instead, they'd awakened to find themselves the galaxy's last hope against their own children gone wrong. The mission would begin soon. A small team carrying humanity's deadliest secret would attempt to penetrate the heart of Alhiam space. And despite all her planning, all her preparation, Alejandra knew the hardest part would be trusting others to carry out this crucial mission while she coordinated the larger battle to come. She looked once more at Earth's shattered remains. Whatever weapon had done that was still out there, probably in Alhiam hands. They had to succeed. The alternative was too horrifying to contemplate. The assembly. Corporal Shula paced the cramped cargo hold of the Karaka vessel, her claws clicking against the metal floor in an irregular rhythm. The mysterious box that Wagner guarded so zealously took up nearly a quarter of their storage space, its presence a constant reminder of their impossible mission. You're going to wear a groove in the deck, Tar commented, the young Kakori's eye stalks tracking her movement. He sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by holographic displays showing cult ship schematics and tactical data. Better than wearing a groove in my brain thinking about this suicide run, Shula retorted. She paused at the viewport, watching the swirling colors of FTL space. Did you know the cultists actually eat their dead? That's what we're pretending to be, cannibalistic zealots who worship the very monsters trying to exterminate us. Skok's tail curled anxiously at her words. Actually, that's a common misconception, the former cultist said. The consumption ritual is symbolic, using synthesized protein that merely represents. Kid, what did I say about lectures? Shula interrupted. Not, Tar answered for him, mandibles clicking in amusement. Their banter was interrupted by Wagner's heavy footsteps. The massive BR Thor emerged from the asset storage room, his crystalline carapace reflecting the hold's dim lighting. 2 hours until we reach the first checkpoint, he rumbled. Time to begin modifications. The modifications were perhaps the most unsettling part of their disguise. Cult ships bore distinctive markings, ritual scarification carved directly into their hulls. The patterns had to be perfect. Cultists believed the symbols channeled their devotion to the Alhiam. Shula watched through external cameras as Tar and Skok worked in 0G, carefully etching the horrific symbols into their ship's hull. The young Kakori's technical expertise guided the plasma cutters with surgical precision, while Skok's first-hand knowledge ensured each mark was properly placed and angled. Tell me something, big guy, Shula said to Wagner as they monitored the work. You've seen what's in that box. Why aren't you more worried? The BR Thor's crystalline features shifted in what might have been a smile. Because I understand it. The humans may seem primitive to you, but they grasp something fundamental about warfare that the Coalition forgot. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective. Simple. Shula's claws clicked in disbelief. There's nothing simple about infiltrating the most heavily defended world in the galaxy. The infiltration is complex, Wagner agreed. The asset itself? Very simple. Very elegant. Very final. His words sent a chill through Shula's carapace. Before she could press him further, alarms blared throughout the ship. A coalition patrol had just dropped out of FTL nearby, exactly as planned. Places, everyone, Shula called out. Time to see if these disguises work. The patrol consisted of 3 Kakori destroyers, their organic-looking hulls bristling with weapons. Right on schedule, they began broadcasting challenges on all frequencies. Unidentified vessel, the patrol commander's voice crackled through their comms. You are entering restricted space. Identify yourself immediately. Skok stepped forward, his tail curved in the precise manner of cult devotees. When he spoke, his voice carried the eerie sing-song cadence of the true believers. We are the blessed of the ascended, bringing offerings to our masters. Our passage has been foretold in the celestial harmonies. There was a tense pause as the patrol processed this. Shula's claws hovered over the weapons controls, ready to go down fighting if their deception failed. Transmit your devotional patterns, the patrol commander ordered. Skok began the complex series of cult authentications they had prepared. Each response had to be perfect, not just the words and symbols, but the subtle variations in transmission strength that cultists believed carried deeper meaning. After what felt like hours, the patrol commander spoke again. Your devotion is recognized, blessed ones. You may proceed. Glory to the Ascended. Glory to the Ascended, Skok replied, maintaining his character until the patrol ships vanished back into FTL. Collective sighs of relief filled the bridge. Their disguise had passed its first test, but it was only the beginning. Ahead lay cult stations, Alhian patrol routes, and eventually, the homeworld itself. Well done, Wagner rumbled. But now comes the truly difficult part. We must begin thinking like cultists, not just acting like them. The Alhiam may not be able to read our thoughts directly, but they can sense deception. How exactly do we think like beings who worship the things trying to kill us? Tar asked, his young voice carrying genuine curiosity. By understanding their perspective, Skok answered quietly. The cultists don't worship the Alhiam as conquerors, but as saviors. They believe the mutations, the telepathy, the consumption of worlds, it's all part of uplifting lesser species to a higher form of existence. That's insane, Shula said. Is it? Skok's tail swayed thoughtfully. Look at what the Alhiam have achieved. They've unified countless worlds under a single purpose. They've transcended normal physical and mental limitations. To some, that looks like evolution, not conquest. To idiots, maybe, Shula muttered, but she understood his point. To infiltrate the cult stations, they needed to understand this twisted perspective, even if they didn't share it. As they continued their journey, each team member immersed themselves in their roles. Tar studied cult technology, learning how they modified their ships and equipment to reflect their beliefs. Skok taught them the intricate rituals and philosophies that governed cult society. Wagner simply watched over their mysterious cargo, his crystalline features revealing nothing of his thoughts. And Shula? She flew, and she planned, and she worried. Because with each passing hour, they drew closer to the heart of Alhiam space, carrying their deadly secret. And she couldn't shake the feeling that somehow, despite all their preparation, the worst surprises still lay ahead, the infiltration. The cult station loomed before them, a twisted amalgamation of organic and mechanical architecture that made Shula's carapace itch just looking at it. Massive tentacle-like structures writhed slowly in space, each one housing thousands of devotees who had given their bodies and minds to the Alhiam service. Beginning docking procedures, Shula announced, her claws dancing across the controls with practiced precision. Skok, start broadcasting the approach prayers. Tar, make sure our hull modifications are displaying properly. Wagner, just keep doing whatever it is you're doing with that box. The station's docking control responded immediately, their transmission carrying the same unsettling sing-song quality that all cult communications shared. Welcome, blessed ones. Your arrival brings joy to the Ascended. Please proceed to Umbilical 7 for purification and documentation. Shula guided their ship toward the designated docking port, trying to ignore the way the station's biomechanical tendrils seemed to reach for them. Purification, she whispered to Skok. You didn't mention anything about purification. A ritual cleansing, he explained, his tail curving in what she had learned was a reassuring gesture. Nothing invasive. They spray us with sacred oils and chant. The real challenge will be the documentation. Why's that? Because, Tar cut in, his young voice carrying an unexpected edge, cult stations maintain extensive genetic records of all their members. They believe genetic purity is crucial for eventual ascension. Shula's claws clicked in agitation. And you're just mentioning this now? Relax, Wagner rumbled from his position by the cargo. The humans provided us with genetic maskers. The station's sensors will read us as registered cult members whose patterns are already in their database. The docking clamps engaged with a shudder that ran through the entire ship. Shula performed the final shutdown sequence, her movements deliberate and ritualistic as befitted their cover. Everyone remember their backstories? They had spent hours crafting their covers, building on Skok's inside knowledge of cult hierarchy and tradition. They were supposed to be a splinter group from the Seventh Revelation sect, bringing a special offering to the Alhiam homeworld. It was a story chosen carefully. The Seventh Revelation was known for its secrecy and unusual practices, which would help explain any small discrepancies in their behavior. A delegation of cult priests awaited them at the airlock. Their bodies were heavily modified, cybernetic implants and ritual scarification marking their devotion to the Alhiam. The lead priest, a modified Caroli whose tail had been replaced with a mechanical tentacle, stepped forward to greet them. Brothers and sisters in ascension, the priest intoned, mechanical tentacle weaving complex patterns in the air. We welcome you to Station of Divine Transformation. Please, submit yourselves to purification that you may walk among us in blessed harmony. What followed was an hour of the most uncomfortable religious ceremony Shula had ever endured. The sacred oils smelled like rotting vegetation, and the chanting seemed designed to hit exactly the wrong resonant frequencies for every species present. But they endured it, maintaining their roles perfectly. The real test came during documentation. Each of them had to submit to genetic scanning, their modified patterns being compared against the station's database. Shula held her breath as the scanner passed over her, praying to whatever real gods might exist that the human technology would work. It did. The priests accepted their identities without question, though there was a tense moment when they inquired about the large cargo container Wagner guarded so carefully. A most special offering, Skok explained, his voice taking on the fervent quality of true believers. One that must be presented directly to the Ascended themselves. The signs and portents have been quite specific about this. The lead priest's cybernetic eyes whirred as they focused on the container. The nature of this offering? Sacred implements from the human homeworld, Skok continued. Retrieved at great cost from the ruins of Earth itself. The Ascended have long sought such artifacts, have they not? That got their attention. The cult's obsession with human artifacts was well known. They believed studying them would help understand the Alhiam's own evolution. After a brief consultation, the priests not only accepted the cargo's presence but offered to expedite their journey to the homeworld. As they were led to their quarters for the mandatory rest period before continuing their journey, Shula couldn't help but admire how perfectly their cover story played into multiple layers of cult psychology. The humans might have been sleeping for 5 millennia, but they certainly hadn't lost their touch for manipulation. Their quarters were Spartan but private, which was all that mattered. Once the door sealed behind them, Tar immediately began scanning for surveillance devices while Skok performed a ritual blessing that would discourage any random visits from other cultists. Well, Shula said quietly, we're in. Now we just have to survive 2 days of acting like fanatics while we wait for our transit clearance to the homeworld. 2 days during which we'll be surrounded by beings who worship the enemy, Wagner added. 2 days during which any slip in our performance could mean discovery and death. 2 days during which we might learn crucial intelligence about Alhiam defenses, Tar pointed out. The cult stations are their primary staging areas for fleet operations. If we're careful, we could gather data that would be invaluable to the coalition. Shula's claws clicked thoughtfully. The kid had a point. They were in a unique position to gather intelligence, but it would mean taking risks beyond their primary mission parameters. We stick to the mission, Wagner rumbled, as if reading her thoughts. The asset is too important to risk for potential intelligence gains. The asset. Always the asset. Shula was getting tired of dancing around what they were really carrying. You know what? I think it's time you told us what's in that box. We're risking our lives for this mission. We deserve to know what we're dying for. The Br Thor's crystalline features shifted in complex patterns as he considered her words. Finally, he nodded. You're right. And we've reached the point where you need to know anyway. But first. He reached into the box and removed something small enough to fit in his massive hand. First, you need to see this. Because once you do, you'll understand why the humans chose this particular team for this particular mission. The revelation. In the dim light of their cult station quarters, Wagner's crystalline hand opened to reveal what looked like an ordinary data crystal. Its surface was scratched and worn, showing its age despite the preservation techniques used to maintain it. This, Wagner said quietly, is what the humans call a black box. It's from the original weapon that shattered Earth. Shula's claws clicked together in shock. Tar's eye stalks went rigid. Even Skok's ever-moving tail froze in place. The planet cracker. Tar whispered, his young voice trembling. But, that's impossible. The weapon was lost millennia ago. Lost, yes. Destroyed, no. Wagner carefully returned the crystal to its container. This is why the humans chose each of us. Shula's piloting skills to get us through the defenses. Tar's technical expertise to help interface with ancient technology. Skok's cultural knowledge to get us close. And my people's natural resistance to radiation to handle what comes next. The larger container's contents suddenly made horrible sense to Shula. We're not just carrying the black box, are we? We're carrying a rebuilt planet cracker. A miniaturized version, Wagner confirmed. Designed to affect a single city rather than an entire world. The humans figured out how to rebuild it from the black box data, but they needed a way to get it to the Alhiam capital. Hence, our mission. Tar's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed this information. The coalition would never approve this. Using the same weapon that destroyed Earth. The political fallout would be. That's why they didn't ask the coalition, Skok interrupted, his tail now moving in agitated patterns. This is a human operation. We're just the delivery system. Shula paced the small room, her mind racing. So that's why the humans aren't putting themselves at risk. They're not worried about telepathic detection, they're worried about being linked to the weapon's use. If this goes wrong, we'll be too dead to worry about politics, Wagner rumbled. But if it succeeds, we'll have eliminated the Alhiam leadership and their primary cloning facilities in one strike. Without their central command structure. A sharp chime interrupted him, the room's communication system activating. Blessed ones, a priest's voice sang through the speaker, your presence is requested in the gathering of divine wisdom. It is time for the evening devotionals. Skok moved to respond, slipping seamlessly back into his cultist persona. We are honored by the invitation. We shall attend with joyful hearts. After the communication ended, Shula turned to her teammates. We'll finish this discussion later. Right now, we need to survive an evening of religious fanaticism without blowing our cover. The gathering of divine wisdom turned out to be even worse than Shula had imagined. Hundreds of cultists packed into a vast chamber whose walls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. The air was thick with incense and the combined body heat of dozens of species all crammed together in religious fervor. They were seated near the front, a position of honor for new arrivals bringing offerings to the Alhiam. This meant they had to participate fully in the rituals, following Skok's subtle cues to avoid making any mistakes that might give them away. The head priest, a grotesquely modified Kakori whose entire body had been covered in cybernetic enhancements, led the congregation in prayers and chants. But it was the content of his sermon that truly caught their attention. The time of final ascension approaches, he proclaimed, his mechanically enhanced voice echoing through the chamber. Our masters have begun the last phase of their great work. Soon, all lesser beings will be uplifted, their forms and minds remade in the perfect image of the Ascended. Screens around the chamber displayed images that made Shula's stomach turn. Entire planets being transformed, their surfaces covered in massive organic structures. Populations being processed through conversion chambers. The Alhiam weren't just conquering anymore, they were preparing for something bigger. The final convergence cannot be stopped, the priest continued. Even now, the great fleets gather. The coalition's resistance crumbles. Soon, blessed metamorphosis will spread across all known space. Tar leaned close to Shula, his voice barely a whisper. They're planning something big. This isn't just war anymore, it's systematic conversion of all sentient life. Which means our mission just became even more critical, Wagner rumbled softly. The service continued for hours. They watched as cultists volunteered for preliminary ascension, their bodies being led away for modification. They listened as plans were discussed for expanding the conversion facilities across captured coalition worlds. And all the while, they maintained their cover, playing the parts of devoted followers while their minds raced with the implications of what they were learning. Finally, back in their quarters, they could speak freely again. The Alhiam aren't just fighting a war of conquest, Skok said, his tail moving in patterns that conveyed deep distress. They're preparing to forcibly evolve every sentient species in the galaxy. Those conversion chambers, they're refinements of the process that created them in the first place. And our weapon? Shula asked. Will it be enough to stop this? Wagner's crystalline features shifted in what might have been a grimace. It has to be. Because if we fail, there won't be anyone left to try again. The Alhiam will remake every living thing in their image. There's something else, Tar added, his eye stalks swiveling to face each of them. During the service, I managed to access some of their data networks. They're not just gathering their fleets, they're gathering them for a specific purpose. In 3 days, they're launching an all-out assault on the human base on the moon. The implications hit them all at once. The humans weren't just fighting for the coalition anymore, they were fighting for their own immediate survival. And their mission, their single shot at stopping the Alhiam, had just become even more time-critical. How long until we get clearance to proceed to the homeworld? Shula asked. Tomorrow morning, Skok answered. Assuming our credentials hold up under final verification. Then we'd better make sure they do, Shula said. Because it sounds like we're carrying the only weapon that can prevent the extinction of every free species in the galaxy. As if to punctuate her words, distant alarms began blaring throughout the station. Something was happening, something that wasn't part of the normal routine. And as they would soon discover, it would force them to accelerate their plans in ways none of them had anticipated, the final gambit. The station's alarms grew louder as emergency broadcasts began flooding all communication channels. Attention all faithful. A coalition strike force has been detected approaching the outer defense perimeter. All devotees are to report to their designated security positions. This is not a drill. Shula's team exchanged quick glances. This wasn't part of the plan, the coalition wasn't supposed to be anywhere near this sector. Unless. The humans, Tar said, his young voice carrying sudden understanding. They're creating a diversion for us. More likely they're trying to gather intelligence about the coming assault on their base, Wagner rumbled. Either way, it gives us an opportunity. The station's security will be focused on external threats. Skock's tail moved in quick, decisive patterns. We need to move now. During emergencies, the verification protocols for departing ships are simplified. They'll want to get all non-essential vessels clear of the combat zone. They moved quickly, gathering their equipment and the precious cargo. The corridors were chaos as cultists rushed to battle stations, many of them already beginning transformation processes to enhance their combat capabilities. The sight of their flesh morphing and shifting made Shula grateful for her species' rigid carapace. At the docking bay, they encountered their first real obstacle. The lead priest from their arrival was there, his cybernetic enhancements now fully activated for battle mode. "Blessed ones," he called out, mechanical tentacle writhing. "Where are you going?" "The offering must reach the Ascended," Skock replied smoothly. "Its delivery cannot be delayed, even by combat. The signs are very specific about this." The priest's augmented eyes whirred as they focused on their group. For a moment, Shula was certain they'd been discovered. But then a massive explosion rocked the station. The coalition forces had engaged the outer defenses. "Go," the priest ordered. "But know that if you flee rather than deliver your offering, the Ascended will know. Their judgment will find you wherever you hide." They managed to maintain their dignified cult persona all the way to the ship. Only when they were sealed inside did Shula allow herself to release the tension in her claws. "Tar, start engine prep sequence. Skock, get me a vector to the homeworld that avoids the main battle zones. Wagner, securing the asset," the massive BR Thor confirmed, already moving to the cargo hold. Through the viewport, they could see coalition ships engaging the station's defenders. It was obviously a probe rather than a serious assault, testing defenses, gathering tactical data. But it was causing exactly the kind of chaos they needed. They were halfway through their launch sequence when everything went wrong. Multiple ships powering up weapons. Tar called out. "They're targeting us." "Impossible," Skock's tail went rigid. "Our cover is intact, they have no reason to." The priest, Shula realized with horror. He wasn't fooled. He was waiting to see what we'd do. Energy beams lanced out from the station's defense platforms. Shula's claws flew across the controls, throwing their ship into evasive maneuvers before they'd even cleared the docking area. Warning klaxons blared as their hull absorbed hits that would have vaporized an unshielded vessel. "The genetic maskers are failing," Tar reported. "Station security is broadcasting our true identities to all Alhium forces in the sector." Shula's mind raced. They couldn't fight their way through, not against an entire station's worth of defenses. They needed something else, something unexpected. "Wagner," she called out. "How close does that weapon need to be to work?" A pause, then understanding in the BR Thor's rumbling voice. "Close. Much closer than we are now. But this station is one of their main conversion facilities," she pressed. "A legitimate target?" "The blast would be partially contained by the station's structure," Tar added, catching on to her plan. "But the radiation would still destroy their production capabilities." "And alert every Alhium in the sector to our presence," Skock warned. "They already know we're here," Shula replied. "Better to strike now than lose our only chance." She looked to Wagner. "Your call, big guy. You're the one who has to handle it." The BR Thor's crystalline features shifted through complex patterns before settling into grim determination. "Do it." What followed was the most intense flying of Shula's life. She had to keep them alive against overwhelming fire while positioning them perfectly for weapon deployment. Tar and Skock worked in perfect sync, managing ship systems and providing tactical data, while Wagner prepared the miniaturized planet cracker for deployment. "Remember," Wagner called out, "once this activates, we have exactly 30 seconds to clear the radiation zone." "No pressure," Shula muttered, her claws dancing across the controls. Just need to outrun a piece of super science that cracked a planet. Nothing to it. The weapon launched. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality itself appeared to fold around the station's central hub. Space twisted, matter screamed, and a terrible light began to build. Go go go! Wagner roared. Shula pushed their engines beyond safety limits, riding the shockwave of the station's partial collapse. Behind them, the weapon's effect spread through the structure, turning solid matter into its component atoms, just as it had done to Earth 5 millennia ago. They barely made it. Even with their hull's radiation shielding, the edges of the effect nearly caught them. But they survived, emerging into normal space as the station broke apart behind them. Multiple ships in pursuit, Tar reported, his voice shaking but professional. But, they're turning back. The radiation levels are too high for them to follow. Plot a course to the Coalition rally point, Shula ordered. And someone please tell me that was worth it. The station's conversion facilities are completely destroyed, Scott confirmed, his tail moving in patterns of satisfaction. And more importantly, we proved the weapon works. We can stop them. Not stop them, Wagner corrected. Not completely. But we've given the Coalition and humanity a fighting chance. The Alhiam aren't invincible, they can be hurt, can be killed, by their own original weapon. As they fled toward friendly space, Shula thought about the implications. They'd struck a meaningful blow against the enemy, yes. But more than that, they'd proven that the combined strengths of humanity and the Coalition could overcome even the most powerful foe. The humans had provided the weapon and the strategy. The Coalition races had provided the means to deliver it. Together, they'd accomplished what neither could have done alone. Send word to command, she ordered. Tell them Operation Planet Cracker was a success. And tell them to prepare for Phase 2. Because this was just the beginning. The Alhiam would be coming for revenge, but now both humanity and the Coalition had hope. They had a weapon that worked. They had proof that victory was possible. And most importantly, they had each other. The war for the galaxy's future was far from over, but at least now they knew they had a chance to win it.